Okay, we're deep into this. This is notes for 1.1, and we're on page 4 of 5. Our goals here are to find x and y intercepts and later positive and negative intervals on this page. Okay, let's start with x and y intercepts. Intercept means to cross. So you have this graph and it crosses the y-axis up there, and that'll be the y-intercept. And there's two places down here where it crosses the x-intercept. I'll label them. There's my y-axis and my x-axis and y-axis. So it wants us to find both the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts. So we'll start with the x-intercepts. I'll abbreviate it like this. And there's two places. One here is 4, 0. And the other place is over here at negative 4, 0. And then there's one y-intercept. If it's a function, you can't have two spots above each other, so this is normal to only have one y-intercept. You can have graphs that violate that, but they're not functions. Okay, so that's 0, 8 on this thing. So 0, 8. And you got to remember that when you're on the y-axis, the x is 0. When you're on the x-axis, the y value is always 0. And that's actually how we're going to lead into finding these down here. So which coordinate equals 0 when you're looking for one of these x-intercepts? And it's the y value. When you're looking for the y-intercept, it's the x value. Let me once again illustrate that. These x-intercepts have a 0 in the y spot, and the y-intercept has a 0 in the x coordinate, like that. Okay, so that leads us in how to find these. If you're given an equation here, and you're looking for the x-intercepts, you'll put a 0 for the y. Now the y in this problem is disguised. Hopefully in Algebra 1, they taught you to look for f of x, and that's the y value. So let me recopy this. I'll put y instead. The absolute value of x minus 6. And we're looking for the x-intercept, so they want us to put a 0 where it says y. I'll add 6 to both sides. And now I'm going to try and solve this by just thinking about it. Which numbers are 6 away from 0? In other words, which numbers could I put in there that have an absolute value of 6? And there's two of them. The absolute value of 6 is 6. And the absolute value of negative 6 is also 6. So you have two answers there, positive or negative 6. Let me show you. This equals 6, and this also equals 6. So then you put it in point format when you answer it. The x is either 6 when the y is 0. Remember, we use 0 for the y. Or it's negative 6 when the y is 0. So those are your x-intercepts. To find the y-intercept, you put 0 for the x. So let me recopy the formula. And you're simply going to put a 0 for the x this time. And the absolute value of 0 is just 0. And when you take 0 minus 6, you get negative 6. So the y-intercept, you used a 0 for the x, and you got a negative 6 for the y. And that's how you find those intercepts. Okay, there's a little bit of a shift for finding positive and negative intervals. So you have to understand what these are first, and then you find them. You're looking for places on the graph where the y value is positive, and those locations are part of the positive interval. and they correspond with stuff that's above the x-axis. So right here is up above the x-axis, and this is also up above the x-axis. So I'm going to highlight the positive intervals here, and I'll use green for them. The y values are always positive in that section, and they're also above the x-axis there, so all the y values there are positive in that section. So I'm choosing to highlight those in green, the positive parts. Now the way you answer this is to tell me the start and the finish, the x value at the start, the x value at the end, and use interval notation. So it's going to be from -4 over here to an x value of -2 over there. So -4 to -2. And then you have to decide whether to include those or not, whether you use round or square parentheses is what it amounts to. The y value here is 0. Since 0 is not a positive number, we don't include this end of it. And likewise over here, is, the y value is 0, so this point over here does not count. And you use round parentheses. Now, this is your beginning x and your ending x, your first and second x. This is not a point, -4, -2. In fact, -4, -2 is a point that's not even on the graph. So it has nothing to do with this problem. It's important that you realize that when you see interval notation, it's a starting x and an ending x, or maybe in the case of range where you're going up and down, it's a bottom y and a top y. Alright, now there's another section where this is above water. It starts at 3, and going to the right, it goes forever towards infinity. So from 3 to infinity. You can't include the infinity, so it's a round bracket there. And the 3 happens when the y is 0. Since 0 is not a positive number, we don't include that. So you're really trying to say the x values that generate positive y values. And that would be anything to the right of 3, but not including 3. Okay, I'm going to highlight the parts of this graph, that have negative y values underneath the x-axis at this point. And the first one over here starts at -infinity in the x direction and ends at -4. So from -infinity in the x direction to -4 in the x direction. It does not include this one since the y value is neutral, it's 0. And it's impossible to include -infinity, so you always put the round one with either negative or positive infinity. On the other end, this orange part starts at -2 and goes until you get an x equals 3. So the starting x value and the ending x value are shown, and for reasons we've already discussed, it's round parentheses. You got a y value of 0 there, a y value of 0 there. Those actually aren't negative numbers, so you do not include them in part of the interval there. And that does it for page 4 of the note set.